That's really funny. Folklore is a really interesting part of history, and I would go so far as to say it's the most important part of history. There's a lot of insight you can get into different cultures that's solely based on the types of myths and folk tales they pass around. And it really is interesting how those stories influence things like holidays, traditions, nursery rhymes, even, and a ton of other things. And that's a lot of words to basically say that we're starting a new series on the channel based around folklore. And the first one we're going to be talking about, or covering, whichever one you want to go, they basically mean the same thing. But the first one we're going to be talking about is Stingy Jack. Centuries ago, in a small village in Ireland, there was a man they all knew as Stingy Jack. And he got his name because of how greedy he was, but I'm sure they had a ton of other names for him since he was also a well known liar, thief, and drunk. He was drunk to the point where if you saw Jack, it'd be a miracle if he wasn't drunk out of his mind. That's the level we're talking about. And most of the people in the village hated Jack so much that word of all his tricks he'd pull on them and just all the horrible stuff he'd do, just how much of a miserable person he was, all that started to spread out of the village. And eventually, the devil himself would hear about him. And there was a bit of jealousy there because Jack was talked about so poorly that the devil started to worry that people would start comparing the two of them and then questioning which one of them was worse. So it was a bit of a competition to be the worst thing on the planet, I guess. But because of this, the devil felt he had no other choice but to find Jack and take his soul. One night, after a particularly wild night of drinking, Jack was drunk and wandering around the village at night, which he usually did, when he came upon a body on the path he was walking. And, he thought it was a little strange for a random body to be on the cobblestone because, at least in his mind, he was the only person who was ever drunk out of his mind. And as a surprise to no one but Jack, that body turned out to be the devil in disguise. And as anyone does when they see the devil, Jack knew that the king of hell had come to take his soul. What's important to know about Jack, though, is that while he was a drunk miscreant, he also was a lot cleverer than most people gave him credit for. And so Jack told the devil, "Fine, you can take my soul, but the least you can do is let me have one more ale before I die." And the devil saw no problem with that, and so he let the drunk have a drink. So they go to Jack's favorite pub and, well, have a few drinks, obviously. But after they finish, Jack tells the devil that he spent all his money drinking earlier and that he should pick the tab up for him since he's taking him hell anyway. The devil was a little confused on how he's supposed to pay a human tab, but Jack suggests that the devil turn himself into a coin to cover the tab and then change right back after they've already paid. And finding no issue with this, the devil turned himself into a silver coin, except Jack didn't pay off the tab, and instead he put the Satan coin in his pocket, where he also had a silver cross, and that cross kept Satan from transforming back to, the devil, and he was essentially just stuck in Jack's pocket. And as one would be, the devil was furious and demanded, then begged to be freed, but Jack would only do it on one condition. The devil had to leave Jack alone for 10 years, and with no other real option, the devil agreed, and Jack was free to be a miscreant for another decade or so. The devil must have been waiting for the day he was able to get his revenge, since exactly 10 years later, while Jack was stumbling around drunk like he always was, Satan found him again. And Jack knew what he came for and agreed to allow Satan to take him without any more tricks. However, despite that, Jack being the liar he was, he did have one final request. And see, Jack may have been a drunk, obviously, but he wasn't immune to hunger, I guess. And from what he told Satan, he was starving, absolutely no food at all day. And so he asked the devil if he could get him an apple from a nearby apple tree. And since he was far too drunk to do it himself, the devil essentially had to climb up there and get it. But the devil was a little more wary, so he intended to grab an apple from a lower branch, but Jack really insisted that the ones up higher were so much sweeter and so much worth it, and maybe they could both share an apple. So the devil pretty much had to climb the tree, and after that brief explanation, he saw no problem with it since Jack did agree, no, you can take me. So he saw no problem and climbed the tree. But as soon as he did, Jack rushed to carve crosses all around the trunk of the tree, or all around the trunk of the tree. And he essentially trapped Satan again, this time up in a tree. Once again, the devil demanded, then begged, to be freed, but Jack as you can expect, had one more condition. This time, his condition was that the devil could never take his soul, no matter what. With no real other option, Satan agreed and just left Jack alone. And by this point, the devil had been tricked twice, and not only tricked twice, but been stuck in really weird places twice by some drunk dude. And so he was pretty much finished with trying to get Jack. He was just going to go back to hell and do whatever else the devil does on his free time. Despite his supposed cleverness, Jack was really just a man, so he was never going to live forever. His incessant drinking would see to it that he died eventually, and he did. And not many mourned him, which he probably expected after the life he lived. However, after he did die, his soul left his body and started to approach the gates of heaven. But St. Peter, I'm not sure if any of you know who St. Peter is, but gates of heaven guy, but point being, St. Peter stopped him. And St. Peter told Jack that the life he led on earth was full of hatred, deceit, and sin, which I think is the more important one. So he had no place in heaven and sent him to hell. In hell, Jack practically begged the devil to let him into the underworld, but he was refused. The devil said that he would not break their deal and told him that he had no place in hell or heaven, so he would return to earth as a wandering soul. And I'm sure Satan saw this as a victory against the man who fooled him, so I'm 90% sure he was celebrating at Jack's sorrow. But as a last showing of pity, the devil gave Jack an ember from the flames of hell. And this was so he could light his way through the night as he wandered, like, the wandering spirit he was going to be. And Jack was sent back to earth, and he used a hollowed out turnip as a makeshift lantern and would just roam the night, walking around with nothing else to do but be sad about the position he's in. The folktale pretty much ends there, but the story of Stingy Jack was also called Jack of the Lantern, and it would later be shortened down to Jack-o'-lantern, which is pretty funny because I didn't know that this is the folktale that spawned the tradition of jack-o'-lanterns. And what I also found, while researching this, was that originally in Ireland they used turnips and rutabagas, but around the 1800s, when a lot of Irish immigrants were coming to the US, they started using pumpkins instead because they were bigger and I'm sure a lot easier to hollow out because pumpkins are pretty easy. They're practically hollow already. And again, this isn't something I didn't know until a few days ago, and I was already planning a folklore series, so why not a Halloween themed one a few days after Halloween is over? Bad timing, but I am curious to know what any of you thought about the story of Stingy Jack, though. I thought it was pretty cool. Also a little funny that Jack was said to be this incredible trickster that fooled the devil, but he did it with tricks anyone should have seen coming. Like, the devil's a really interesting character whenever he's put into media that isn't the Bible, because he's either a depressed sad boy like in Paradise Lost or an evil monster like in Blood Meridian. And then you get this where he's kind of just a bumbling idiot. But again, curious to see what you all think about it. Like I said at the start, I do want to do more folklore stuff, so maybe we'll throw these in once or twice a month. It really depends on when I run out of ideas, but it all depends. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.